Level 1, the believer. The whole thing starts at a party. You're 34 years old. You go to a big charity party organized by a children's hospital, the kind where everything is overpriced, and you sit next to a man named Corwin. During the conversation, he doesn't mention money at all. He talks about his kid's soccer game. He talks about a sailing trip where the wind completely died for 2 days, and how funny that seems in hindsight. There's a candle on the table. There's a band playing somewhere in the distance. And this man sitting right next to you prefers to talk about the wind rather than money. You like him immediately because most rich people brag he doesn't. 3 weeks later, he takes you out to lunch. Over lunch, almost by accident, he starts talking about the money business. The business his father started a very long time ago, in 2 small rooms above a tiny shop. Every year it earns more than the year before, never an enormous amount, just enough to feel steady and safe. He has done this for 11 consecutive years, even in the years that went badly for everyone else. He explains how the business works, sometimes getting so dry that he laughs, and says it puts people to sleep at dinner parties. You ask why you've never heard of it before. He says he never advertises, that he hasn't even set up a website, which somehow makes him seem not less trustworthy, but more trustworthy. He says his business is closed to new people almost every year. Right after, he mentions, there happens to be an opening right now because an old friend passed away and the widow needs to get her money back. So there is a small opening just for now. And something about it, being chosen rather than being sold to, makes you stop asking questions. It feels less like a sales pitch and more like winning a quiet little lottery that only one person in the room knows about, and that person picked you. That night, you do one small check. You look up his company on a state registry. The company is real. There are no issues in the records. You feel safe, the way you feel safe after checking that the front door's locked, even though you were already pretty sure. Just to test the waters, you give him $50,000, just a small amount, an amount that wouldn't change anything in your life if it vanished tomorrow. A few weeks later, a letter arrives in the mail. Your money has grown a little. Not much. Just enough to feel real, safe, and boring in the best possible way. That weekend, you tell your spouse about it. Folding the laundry, she barely looks up, a sock in each hand, giving half her attention. Both of you think this quiet, boring moment doesn't matter at all, but it does. It is the first domino, and the first domino never looks like one. Tell you what, if someone had told you that night that this man was about to change your entire life, you would have laughed out loud at the table in front of everyone. Level 2, the convert. That is how the story quietly slides into its next chapter, the chapter where you start telling other people about the business. 8 months pass, and your money continues to grow a little every month. Then one day, the entire stock market plunges and everyone panics. The kind of week where everyone at work talks about it in hushed tones around the coffee machine. But your money doesn't even flinch. It sits safely as if nothing happened. Corwin sends you a short email early in the morning, calmly explaining why your money didn't fall like everyone else's. You read the email 3 times. Before anyone even asks you to, you forward that email to your wife's brother. And just like that, without intending to and without a single person telling you to, you become something new. Not just someone who believes in Corwin, someone who passes that belief on to others, wrapped and offered like a gift. Someone who tells others to believe in him too. The funny thing is, nobody gives you a job title for it. You just do it, because in that moment, sharing something good with someone you love feels like the best thing in the world. A week later, your brother-in-law calls you with a list of little questions he wrote down. How much money do you need to start? Does Corwin accept new people in the winter? And answering his questions patiently starts to feel like a small job you never formally accepted. He even asks if he should wear a nice suit to lunch, as if there were a rule for it, and you laugh and tell him to just come with a good appetite. Now you invest more money, $200,000, taking it out of a safe, boring retirement account that had been slowly growing for years, without you ever asking why it grew. Corwin invites you to dinner at his house, a massive home overlooking the water, and a wine cellar he shows you almost bashfully. There are 11 other people at that dinner, and they are all people just like you from the same circles. People from your church or synagogue, parents from your kids' school, friends from the tennis club where you've played every Saturday for years. And suddenly you realize something. No one at this table knows anyone who has ever lost money with this man. Not a single person. And that thought feels like proof that everything is fine. It is no proof at all. It is simply a carefully constructed room, built over years, where only happy people sit. On the drive home that night, your wife asks how beautiful the house was, and without realizing it, you find yourself describing that wine cellar in more detail than your own living room. And you don't notice, not yet, that you have started telling his story as if it were your own. You even start rehearsing his little jokes in your head to use at your own dinner parties, as if they were yours. For a long time, nobody notices you doing it. In fact, not even you. Level 3, the evangelist. 2 years later, without even feeling the tremor, you slide into the next chapter of the story. The chapter where you start bringing your own family into the business. You are 36 years old. On paper, your money has risen to $340,000. At a family dinner, your cousin asks, half jokingly, half seriously, how you were able to renovate the lake house. His own small business is struggling to stay afloat that year, barely able to pay his 3 workers. You start telling him about Corwin, warmly, the way you would talk about a good doctor or a mechanic who has never let you down. You watch something ignite behind his eyes, likely the very same look you had 2 years ago. Hopeful, a little desperate, already half convinced. 3 weeks later, your cousin invests $75,000 that he truly had no room in his budget to spare. At the next dinner, he tells everyone it was just money sitting around, and you almost laugh because you said the exact same thing at this exact same table exactly 2 years ago. And the big changes keep growing quietly in small steps, the way real shifts always happen. You're no longer just sharing, you are convincing. And the pride you feel isn't about money. It's the pride of finally being the person in the family who has answers instead of questions. At the next family gathering, you watch your cousin's wife hug you a little too tightly, thanking you for something she hasn't quite found the right words for yet. You file that hug away as proof that you did something good, even though it is no proof at all. You don't yet know that this exact warm, proud feeling is the very thing a judge in a courtroom will hear about later, used as evidence that you helped sell something that was never real. Because in the end, what matters is not what you intended to do, but what you actually did. Corwin now starts inviting you into smaller rooms with fewer people, only 3 or 4 each time, with a fireplace burning inside the room even when the weather isn't cold, and asking your opinion on new people, whether they seem like the right fit. You don't realize someone is training you for a role. You feel special and chosen. In the end, slowly, without realizing it, you start talking like him. You even copy the slight pause he uses before certain words, the exact same pause he always uses. And one night at your own dinner table, you catch yourself doing it, and for half a second, you hear yourself the way a stranger would. Then the moment passes, and you let it go. Your wife even teases you once, saying you talk like a completely different person at dinners now. But you brush it off with a laugh, wearing it with the pride of a new haircut. Level 4, the inner circle. 2 years later, you fall right into the middle of the biggest chapter of this story, the chapter of becoming one of his favorite people. You're 38 years old. On paper, your money has grown to nearly $900,000, sitting safely in a box next to your passports. Personally, you have brought in 6 new people and roughly $1.4 million of fresh money. Your cousin, 2 families from the tennis club, a former college roommate you hadn't spoken to in years. In return, Corwin starts paying you something too, a little extra money each year just for bringing people in, like a thank you note with a check attached. Your own accountant approves it without asking too many hard questions, because everything in Corwin's paperwork looks proper, clean, official, and expensive. The way a confident tie makes you forget to check the shoes, And this is the moment quietly, on a day no one marks on a calendar, when you stop being merely someone who was fooled and become someone who helps fool others, even with no intention of doing so. That winter, you buy a ski house, partly using the value of the Ashford Bridge statements as proof of your financial credibility. Your kids love that house more than any toy you've ever bought them, and every time school goes on break, they beg to return to the ski house. There's a photo from that first winter on the porch, all of them wearing matching sweaters. And you will hold on to that photo even when almost everything from these years is gone. At a New Year's Eve party, a man named Phil, someone you've only met a couple of times, jokes, drink in hand, that Corwin must have found the only real way to beat the market. Everyone bursts out laughing. Naturally, you laugh too. No one in that room pauses to consider that if what Phil just said were true, it would be the single greatest discovery in the entire history of money. No one stops to think, because thinking would mean tearing down an entire life you painstakingly built piece by piece. Laughing at Phil's joke and ordering another drink seems so much easier. Level 5, the expanding network. This part slowly carries the story into its widest chapter yet. You are 40 years old. At a grand dinner, Corwin tells everyone that his business now holds more than $380 million. Years later, you will learn that when you first joined, it was actually much smaller, just 40 million, meaning it grew nearly tenfold in just 6 years. A thought that should feel terrifying feels curiously thrilling, because no one in that room checks the math, they all just laugh and applaud. Your role has settled into something quiet and steady. You don't really sell things anymore. You are simply a trusted name, the person other families consult before saying yes. In your mind, without meaning to, you have started keeping a mental list of everyone whose money now flows thanks to a decision you made at someone's dinner table. Your cousin, your wife's father, 2 families from the tennis club, an old friend from college. A strange list you carry in your head, growing heavier with each passing year, never written down on paper. The list has grown so long that you've stopped counting even to yourself. Corwin starts introducing you to newcomers as true family. It sounds like a warm compliment, but it is actually a quiet sort of job. No one at that dinner thinks about what that phrase really means. They are too busy eating shrimp and feeling lucky. Lucky to be called family by a man with a private wine cellar. Your wife's father, a man who worked behind a small pharmacy counter for 31 years, living his entire life counting pennies, decides to invest $600,000 of his retirement savings after a long Thanksgiving conversation on your back porch. A conversation in which, without realizing it, you use the exact same calm voice Corwin uses. Months later, when everything collapses, that single conversation on the porch will sit on your chest like a heavy stone you can never put down. That night, he had even opened a special bottle of wine to celebrate. You will never be able to drink that wine again without feeling sick to your stomach. Level 6, the first crack. And that heavy feeling gradually begins turning into the next chapter of the story. The chapter where little things no longer make sense. You are 42 years old. A woman named Denise, someone you've only met a few times at Corwin's dinners, wants to withdraw $500,000 because her son has fallen ill and needs immediate help. The paperwork says it should take 10 days. It takes 41 days. And when the money finally arrives, it doesn't come from the familiar entity. It comes from another name you've never heard before. You ask Corwin about this, gently, the way you would ask a friend an awkward question. He calmly explains it using a few big, dismissive words. And you stop asking. You even feel embarrassed, the way you'd feel embarrassed asking a doctor why his handwriting is so illegible. What your brain is doing right now has a name. What doctors call an unwillingness to hold 2 conflicting truths in your mind at once. Your brain quietly discards one of them, like tossing a receipt you don't want to look at too closely. After that, small cracks continue to show. Quiet ones, the kind you would only notice if you were already looking, which you aren't. Not really, not yet. A text message from your cousin saying his money is delayed. A quiet rumor circulates about a family from the tennis club who left months ago and never returned for dinner. Everyone assumes they moved to another city for work, and no one ever follows up to see if that's true. Now at night, after your wife falls asleep, you sometimes pull out your old paperwork and try to do the math yourself, slowly, running your finger down the page. Whenever the numbers almost don't add up, you close the folder instead of finishing, because finishing requires a kind of courage you don't yet possess. And you keep repeating the same sentence to yourself, the thing everyone in this kind of story tells themselves. If something were wrong, I would definitely know. You tell yourself this so many times that year that it begins to sound not like a hope, but like a fact. A man who taught your kid to sail could never do something like this. Never. Once you even say it out loud to your wife, with a slight laugh, as if saying it with enough certainty could make it true. Level 7, the reckoning, and then, without any warning, the story turns sharply to its next chapter. You are 43 years old. For several weeks, the entire stock market plunges rapidly and everyone is suddenly terrified. The kind of market where the news repeats the same anxious words every night. For the first time in 9 years, dozens of people connected to Corwin's business try to withdraw their money at the same time. Some need it for their children's tuition. Some are just scared and want it close by, like grabbing your blanket in a storm. And this is precisely the moment every story of this kind is built to break. A real business has real things it can actually sell to pay people back. Real stocks, real buildings, real assets sitting somewhere. A fake business has only tomorrow's incoming money. And if that stream stops flowing, everything dries up. Which is a fancy way of saying the music has finally stopped and there aren't enough chairs for everyone. You call Corwin directly, something you haven't done in years without going through his assistant first. And it takes 2 full days for him to call back. When he finally does, his voice is different. Tighter, less calm. He says there is currently a temporary pause on withdrawals. Completely normal. Every serious business does this from time to time. This is a very calm way of saying that everyone is asking for their money at once and there isn't enough, because there was never really enough. That night, you repeat those exact words to your wife's father, with a confidence your body clearly doesn't feel. When he gently asks if he should be worried, looking at you the way he has looked at you since the day you married his daughter, you tell him no. It is the first real lie you have told him in 20 years. And in that moment, it doesn't feel like a lie at all. It feels like protection, which is precisely the disguise every lie in this entire story has worn from the very beginning. Later, you will realize that telling that lie took only 4 seconds, less time than ordering a coffee, and that the courage to tell the truth never arrived on the night you actually needed it. Level 8, the collapse. 6 weeks later, without warning, the story slams straight into its next chapter. On a completely ordinary Tuesday morning, 2 men working for the government arrive at your front door, holding a piece of paper. Not to arrest you, just to ask questions and take every email and document you ever received from Corwin. Boxes full of 9 years' worth of letters that once felt like validation and now feel solely like evidence. For 3 hours, you sit at your own kitchen table answering their questions, while your wife stands in the doorway with an expression you will spend years trying to forget. At one point, one of the men gently asks if she would like a glass of water. Such a small, ordinary question. But somehow, that small moment of kindness is the exact moment everything finally feels real to you, far beyond the numbers, and slowly, piece by piece, you learn what these 2 men already fully know, that Corwin never actually did any of the safe, smart things he claimed. Not once in 11 years. Not a single trade. It was all just a good story told very calmly over and over for a very long time. The $380 million everyone believed existed was actually under $60 million in spendable cash. A discrepancy so vast, it is almost hard to comprehend, like the difference between a full swimming pool and a wet towel on the floor. And that for years, Corwin had been using new investors' money to pay off older investors. The oldest trick in the history of finance, so old and famous it has its own name. Taught in schools, joked about at parties, something even school kids learn in a lesson. without knowing their fathers were living inside a real-life version of it. And somehow, despite being so famous, it still worked. On you, on your wife's father, on your cousin, because the con was never truly about numbers. It was about trust. And when trust grows within a family, within a house of worship, within a tennis club of longtime friends, it offers zero resistance to numbers. It simply swallows them quietly and moves on to dessert. Until a piece of paper arrives at your door and speaks louder than everything that had ever entered your quiet, comfortable little world. Level 9, the accounting. This leads, without any gap, straight into the next chapter of the story, the chapter of paying the price. You are 44 years old. You sit in a small room beside a lawyer who charges more per hour than you used to make in a full day at your old job. Because the person tasked with unwinding what remains of Corwin's business has specifically written your name on an official document as someone who withdrew more money than they put in. And here's the part almost no one warned you about. It isn't just Corwin's firm that has to pay it back. You have to pay it back too. It doesn't matter that you didn't know. It doesn't matter that you believed every word of it yourself. The rule is simple and does not care about your feelings. If the money was never truly earned, it has to go back, regardless of whose hands it passed through. All the extra money you thought you had legitimately earned was never actually yours. And there is something almost impossible to explain about losing money you never truly possessed in the first place. It was other people's money, carrying your name on a piece of paper. So they want it back. All of it. The ski house. Every single dollar of the extra money Corwin paid you for bringing people in. Every piece of the life you thought you earned through patience and prudence. Your lawyer, trying to make you feel a little better, says that at least you aren't the worst person in this mess. It is meant to be comforting. It really isn't. Your cousin stopped speaking to you entirely. The same cousin whose wife hugged you so tightly at that family party, back when everything still felt like a gift instead of a debt. He even starts attending a different house of worship just to avoid having to sit near you. Once you send him a text message trying to explain, trying to apologize, and it hangs there for months, unread, which somehow says more than any reply ever could. And your wife's father, months later at a family dinner, never raises his voice. Without lifting his eyes from his plate, he simply says quietly that he trusted you the way he trusted his own son. And that single quiet sentence hurts more than any court document ever could. The kind of pain that appears on no ledger, but never truly goes away. Level 10, the wreckage. And so the story finally heads toward its final chapter. What remains? You are 46 years old. Corwin confessed in court to what he did over a year ago, wearing a suit that didn't fit him the way his old suits did when you saw him one last time. And he will spend the rest of his life, or close to it, behind bars. You were never charged with a crime. The authorities determined that you were careless and a little too eager, but not someone who knew everything was fake. It sounds like good news until you see the actual bill, which looks like anything but good news when you read it line by line. You're forced to give up the ski house. You're forced to return 9 years of extra payouts. Almost everything you built on numbers that were never real. Gone, erased just as easily as it was written. In the end, you have less money than the year you first sat down to lunch with a man who just wanted to talk about a soccer game, which, if you can bear to laugh at it, is a strangely efficient way to lose nearly a decade. Your wife's father receives about 60 cents back for every dollar he invested, paid out over 4 long years. He never brings up the porch conversation again. Not because he forgives you, but because some pains endure in quiet silence rather than arguments, the same way he used to carefully and habitually fold receipts behind his old pharmacy counter. And that silence shows up at every family dinner for the rest of both your lives, in the slight pause before he passes you a dish. That pause lasts maybe half a second. Somehow it contains all 9 years. You move into a smaller house. You take a normal job with a boss 12 years younger than you, who has no idea how much you were once worth on paper. Your kids still mention the ski house sometimes, fondly, the way someone talks about an old dog that is no longer around. You don't correct them. It is easier to leave certain things soft and simple in a child's memory, even when you know the full truth is anything but simple. Some nights, driving home along a road you never had to take before, you think about that first party, the sailing trip story, the wind that died for 2 whole days, and you finally understand, though it is far too late to help anyone, that the boat story was never really about a boat. Friendship was always the real sail, the only thing more valuable than money and the only thing far more costly to buy back once it is gone. And tonight, somewhere in another city, at another party, a different version of Corwin is telling a different version of you a story about his kid's soccer game, and neither of them yet knows what they are about to build together or what it will cost. Some nights, out of pure habit, you still start explaining the safe, boring, wonderful plan to a stranger at a party, until you remember in the middle of a sentence that none of it was ever real. So you stop talking and order another drink, and no one at the table even notices the sentence you never finished. The cycle continues.